All right, guys, here we go. Here with the All Horned Frogs podcast. The initial episode, we're going to go big. We got Sonny Dykes coming on. This is part of the ALLCITY Network podcast cavalcade. It's going across the country. Right now, we're local with you guys. I'm Jeff Wilson. You guys may remember me from previous endeavors at the newspaper in Fort Worth and then the little website that kind of flamed out there in 2022, 2023. But TCU graduate, got to be perfectly honest about that. So I like my Horned Frogs a little bit, but I will try not to be a homer. That's kind of my pledge here. But lots of fun times ahead here. We're going to have Sonny Dykes on. He's coming up at the top of the hour. Brian Estridge will precede him, the voice of the Horned Frogs, and then Jamie Plunkett from 247 Sports will be on, kind of helping us navigate all the way through this. I'm here at the DLLS studios in Dallas, website that launched August 26th. TCU is our first college endeavor. Even though we're headquartered in Dallas, we wanted to go over to Fort Worth. That's where the better football is, the best product, the Big 12, 2022 national runner-up. So good times ahead here for the Frogs. And it's been good times so far on the field for them. 2-0, off to a 2-0 start. You can't go undefeated without winning the first one, which they did at Stanford. Kind of a gritty back and forth game. Overcame some first half mistakes on defense, especially with some penalties. But look, any road game, any road win is a good win. You know that the other team is going to be fired up for its home opener, and TCU handled the pressure, handled the situation, got the W, came back home. Saturday, home debut at the Carter. Long Island U, not exactly a juggernaut. So TCU did what they're supposed to do. You don't mess around with a team like that. TCU put them away pretty handily, 45-0. Big games all around. First shutout for TCU since 2017. That probably made Gary Patterson smile a little bit. But the stars of the season so far, my opinion, Josh Hoover, the sophomore quarterback from Rockwell Heath High School. Boy, he just looks a lot more comfortable this year. I know he missed spring drills. Plenty of playing time last year, sure, but so far through 2 games, looks like they're trying to manage the game as opposed to not necessarily winning the game, though we did do that against Stanford. So I think it's the best of both worlds there. Offensively, he's spreading the ball around, bunch of receivers, Savion Williams, a guy I did a feature on in the TCU Magazine's fall edition. Always never left TCU. The era of transfer portal and all of that. Savion from Marshall out in East Texas, he's stayed true to the Horned Frogs. Not something you see a lot of these days. But 16 catches for him in 2 games, 11 in the opener. It looks like, he's 6'5", so he's 6'5", 230, runs like the Dickens, and he runs people over. So I think that you'll see him try to be a big part of the offense. Sonny Dykes and Kendall Briles trying to get him the ball as much as they can and just let him do his thing. The running game's been solid. I really like, and I think after the last two seasons of Joe Gillespie as defensive coordinator, I really like the way the defense has looked under new coordinator Andy Avalos. Boy, a shutout obviously is very nice, no matter who it's against. But you kind of look at this defense and compare it to the last 2 years. It just seems like they're getting a lot more pressure on the quarterback, a bunch of sacks, a bunch of end rushers who've done a lot of good things. It's good to see players who've been around for a while doing it, but also these newcomers. The Rangers have, not the Rangers, the Horned Frogs have four or three for sure guys who came in from other schools who are just getting it done. You got to like that. Nana Osafa Mensah, the transfer from Notre Dame. He's a Fort Worth native, came home. Guy's already got his undergraduate degree and his master's at Notre Dame. I don't know what he's doing now. I guess he's taking more graduate level classes, but maybe he's going to medical school. I don't know. I'll have to ask Sonny Dykes about that when he comes on. But he spoke to the media yesterday at Media Day, the weekly media conference with the coach and some players, and really excited to be here. I think that people who come from Fort Worth and go elsewhere, they realize the importance of what it means to play at home now, I think, and let the family see you without having to drive across the country or catch a flight and then drive. Because I don't think it's easy to get to South Bend. Maybe I'm wrong. And it looks like he's kind of dodged a bullet here because Notre Dame losing at home to Northern Illinois after just squeaking one out over A&M in College Station. So forget about the trials of the Fighting Irish. It's an exciting time, I think, if you're Sonny Dykes, to see really for the first time your guys. When he came in 2022, took over a team that was largely recruited by Gary Patterson. They did some things to it though. They did the sports nutrition. They really attacked the weight room in a different way. Made players faster, stronger. Avoided injury. Yeah, I think that was another big thing. This team stayed healthy. That team stayed healthy throughout fall camp. Avoided the major injuries. And you could tell late in games that they had more than maybe the previous Frogs teams had before Sonny Dykes took over and came over from SMU. Last year, not great, obviously, coming off the high of playing for the national championship. It just didn't work out, whether it was Chandler Morris getting hurt, losing the opener to Colorado. I know that stung the TCU staff. And it just really didn't get better. But I guess the silver lining, though, is Josh Hoover did get a lot of time. Players who might not have played otherwise had it been a situation where the starters and the regulars and the best players needed to be on the field. Well, they got an opportunity to play last year, too. So it seems like it's maybe coming to fruition right now. Little too early to tell. It's still only 2-0. TCU has its biggest test coming up Saturday at Amon G. Carter Stadium in Fort Worth, 6:30 kickoff against UCF. I guess you don't call them Central Florida anymore. It's kind of like calling TCU Texas Christian. You just don't hear it very much. But the Knights are a good football team. They run the ball really well with KJ Jefferson. Gus Malzahn, their coach, he's kind of like a chameleon offensively. He's able to adapt and make changes on the fly depending on his personnel. And this year it's a run-heavy team. And KJ Jefferson, the transfer from Arkansas, big dude too, like 6'5", 230, 240, can run really, really well. So it's going to be a good test for the Frogs' run defense. It looks like their secondary is solid with some transfers that have come in, some holdovers from last year. I know Johnny Hodges is a linebacker, but one of my favorite guys will remember in 2022. The first time he met with the media, he really had the old SID Mark Cohen worried. Some of the things he said would not have flown well with Gary Patterson, but kind of talking trash about, not trash, but things that were inflammatory that Gary Patterson probably would have called him into his office, but instead, it's kind of the be who you are era of TCU football with Sonny Dykes. And if you can be who you are, say what you want to say within reason, and keep it off of social media. But it's good to see Johnny Hodges back after injuring his hand last year. So we're not just going to talk about football though on this show. We'll try to touch them all. I know right now that in the fall, football is the big dog. It's always the big dog, even in the damn spring. It's the big dog with recruiting and fall practices. But good things are happening on the volleyball court for TCU right now. big recruiting weekend coming up. We'll talk to Jamie for men's basketball. We'll talk to Jamie Plunkett about that a little bit later on in the show. But first, we want to get you to to Brian Estridge. However, before we do that, it's important that we remember today is 9/11. I don't know where you guys were, how old some of you guys watching or listening were at the time. If you're at TCU as a student right now, you probably weren't even alive. But this is the day, obviously, September 11th, 2001, when terrorists flew buildings into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and the flight that crashed in Pennsylvania. Too many people gone too soon. Dastardly deed done by some pretty rotten people who got their comeuppance finally. But we need to remember the families, the people who were lost, the first responders who answered the call and never came back. And I know I remember where I was. I was in Colorado. I was a spry 26-year-old at the time. I'd just been to my one of my best friend's weddings. Never forget my mom's reaction to it when I had to get on the airplane and come back. She did not want me to go. And but life changed forever in a sense that travel's kind of a pain in the butt still with TSA and all that stuff, but all these things for the better. And I think people became more vigilant of it. But I think it also put a spotlight on sports at the time. When baseball season was going on, so and football had just started, and everything kind of took a pause. But when everybody came back, when sports started up again, when we realized it was okay to get going again, I really think that baseball kind of galvanized the country. You remember the World Series with President Bush. He could have thrown out the first pitch in Arizona where the World Series opened, but he wanted to do it at New York, where the greatest loss of life had occurred. And whether you liked his policies or liked him as a president or not, he smoked one right down the middle. Probably the coolest first pitch ever. And it's a time to remember those folks, but also a time to be glad for your favorite sports team, and to realize that sports is fun, and that there are bigger things in life. But when it comes to TCU football, that was a decent season for them in 2001, and their game got delayed with, I think it was Southern Miss. They had to go play it at the end of the year. Ended up getting into a bowl game, and then really TCU has taken off on the football field since then. So keep the 9/11 folks in your thoughts today. Make it a good day. Get the most out of it. If 9/11 showed anything, and you never know when it might go away. So keep thinking positive, man, and keep trucking. So let me tell you a little bit more about DLS. We're going to cover the Frogs, starting with a weekly podcast. I might crank out a few stories every now and then, especially once the Texas Rangers season ends. If people are watching and wondering what I'm doing talking about TCU, believe me, I come well versed in it. But yes, it is baseball season. The Rangers are losing 5-2, I think, right now in Arizona. DLLS will have a Rangers post-game podcast. DLLS covers all four major sports teams: Mavs, Stars, Cowboys, Rangers. We're going to be covering TCU, and so we're looking forward to the ride. And again, TCU, then put it on Amon G. Carter someday. The first college team to be covered by DLLS. I tell you what, going to have Brian Estridge coming up next to have a kind of a breakdown the season, see what he sees from atop the stadium in the press box. But before we do that, it's time to let me tell you about Sleeper. Sleeper is, if you don't know, a fantastic app. It's basically daily fantasy. They're Sleeper's known mostly for its work with fantasy football and running fantasy football leagues, but you can do all kinds of stuff and good or bad, don't judge me. My son is into daily fantasy. He's only 12, but he can pick them, and it's fun. I mean, today I think it was somebody have, it's in the past, Corey Seager's always been my example. Will Corey Seager have more than 0.5 hits in a game? There's a pretty good chance he's going to have more than 0.5 hits in a game. So you click him, you pick a couple others. The more you pick, the better the odds, or the higher the odds, the more you can win. It's fun stuff. But it is the best fantasy platform league out there. But you can put your ball knowledge to the test, whether picking your favorites or least favorite players. Maybe you want to wish something bad on, I don't know, Paul Skeens for some reason, if you don't like the Pirates. This is a good app. And Sleeper keeps you in the alert with instant alerts for major breaking news, injuries. You can stay ahead of the game for if you have your fantasy league. So look, if you think you have what it takes, download the Sleeper app and use the code DLLS TCU, and you will get up to $100 match on your first deposit. That's free money. All right, free money. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states, including the great state of Texas. Check out Sleeper today. Speaking of Texas, fans are flocking to Fort Worth this weekend to see TCU UCF. The game at Amon Carter is sold out. 46,000 fans will be in attendance, but you can still get tickets. Do you know how? The Game Time app. This is what you do. If you love going to big sporting events like people do, I enjoy it. My son enjoys it. But you don't necessarily have the plans. It's last minute. You weren't able to get tickets. You can get them here through Game Time. There's a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting your tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only the best deals on the best seats, so you don't have to waste time. They also have a deal where you can click on the seat and see a picture of what your view is. So you won't be buying any tickets that are behind a beam that blocks the half the field out. You're going to be able to choose your seat, customize your spot, get in there. So look, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code DLLS for 20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. So we are going into segment number 2. Brian Estridge. Look at that good-looking son of a gun. There he is from Fort Worth. Brian, I'm gonna not keep you forever. I don't want you to have to fight traffic getting back to Colleyville. And I know quitting time's important for you. And it's not Thursday, so you don't have to go to Railhead yet and do Sonny's show. So
right.
But how you doing, man? I'm enjoying seeing you again. I know we saw each other so much,
Yeah, I know. You got a great looking set there, man. I'm fired up about this podcast for you. I know you're excited too, and
yeah.
honored to be part of this with you, man.
Yeah, well, Brian, as you guys know, is a long-time voice of the Frogs
Long time.
and a new empty nester.
Yeah, you
How's
might
that
want to
going?
ask my wife about that, how that's going.
I don't want to ask her about it. I'll ask you about it.
Yeah.
How are Gaines is okay? I'm sure. Second year up at Air Force. How's Ellie doing
Yeah,
out in Emory in
she,
Atlanta?
she's doing great. They're playing baseball and softball, and I no longer wear pants at home. So it's
Oh,
yeah. So in that respect, I think it's going quite well.
well, I'm glad for you. I mean, I don't know if I'm glad for Becky, but I'm glad for you.
That's why I
So
said
hey,
you might want to ask her.
okay, all right. So hey, 2 games in, you don't get to take a playoff. You have to watch every stinking play. What are your impressions so far about the 2024 Frogs?
I'll be honest with you. I think better than I thought. I thought this team, and you and I had talked. I thought this team was a 7 or 8 win team. I really kind of felt that that's where they would fall. This team might be better than that, Jeff. And I tell you why. I don't think I knew what kind of impact Andy Avalos was going to have on this defense. And now they haven't exactly played the Los Angeles Rams yet.
Yeah,
But, to pitch a shutout, I mean, that hadn't been done here since 2017. To pitch a shutout against anybody is good. The second half against Stanford, I thought they were much, much better. So I think there's a little something to this defense. And to me, when you put in a new system like this, it's only going to get better. I mean, they're only going to put in more wrinkles and more, nuances, and guys are going to become more accustomed to it. So I think you're going to continue to see an improved defense throughout the year. I think Josh Hoover's been good. When you talk to him, he says, I didn't realize how hurt I was until I got it fixed. And he had been, battling that back thing for a couple of years. So he seems very confident. The offensive line looks like they may be better than we thought they would
Yeah.
be. And so I think you gotta throw all that into the bucket and say, you know what, this team might be better than a lot of people had it pegged.
I wanted to ask you about the defense and Andy Avalos. I kind of mentioned it in the beginning here. To me, it seems like they're more aggressive than they were
Oh
under
yeah.
Joe Gillespie, and not just trying to get after the quarterback. It seems like the guys in the secondary feel more freedom to make plays. Tell me my eyes are right.
No, I think you're totally right. I think there's also this. So you got better players back there. They went in the portal. They made sure that they kind of restocked in that defensive backfield. Corner was a priority. So you got guys who played a lot of snaps who all of a sudden are back there now making a difference for TCU. And I think that lends itself to, success when you're able to do that. One of the things that stood out to me, though, is going to this four-man front. They've been able to get pressure. And it's funny because my man Landry Burnine, who does the games with me, he had a line last week that was kind of a throwaway line. And then I got to thinking about it. I said, he's totally right. He said, you can't have good corner play unless you have good D line play. And you can't have good D line play unless you've got good corner play. And he's totally right that those
Yeah.
guys kind of work hand in hand. As hard as that is to figure that they're 15 yards apart, but if you don't have the confidence in either one of those, but when you look at Travis Broughton and the time that he had at Utah in a really good defense for Kyle Whittingham, I mean that tells you right there. When as much as he was able to play for Whittingham, and then he come down and then you got Lamarian James on the other corner spot, who's a terrific athlete out of Old Dominion. You got guys that played a lot.
Yeah.
And so when you have that and you have confidence in those guys at corner, it frees up, Cooper McDonald on the defensive end and Nana at the other end. And Timon Mitchell had a good first game against Stanford, and Caleb Fox has been steady. So it does all kind of work hand in hand.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Broughton and James. They're the two guys who came in and had reasonable good sized shoes to fill, from the last couple of years. And,
Yeah.
yeah, but then the safeties have the experience, Namdi Obiezer and Kamara is back there.
Yep.
It
Bud
seems
Clark.
like Bud Clark, who I think he has a future in TV or something. He just
Yeah.
seems like
Yeah.
a good character. But and then the portal. We talked to Sonny about it a little bit yesterday at the press conference. I mean, these defensive ends, it goes back to TCU used to be defensive end U. I mean, when you started with the Shobles and then Tommy Blake and Chase
Yeah.
Ortiz and Jerry Hughes, just guys who could get after the quarterback. And it seems like they've got that in some of these guys.
I think you're totally right. I think these guys look like TCU defensive players. And I'm not so sure we had that in that 3-3-5. But if you look at Cooper McDonald, who originally signed with Washington, ends up at San Diego State, now comes back home. He's a kid who's out of Justin. He looks like a TCU defensive end. Devin Deal in that game against Stanford. I mean, you saw what he could do. Played a lot of snaps in Tulane. Nana at the other defensive end, who was a starter at Notre Dame,
Right.
now comes back home. So I mean, you've got experience, but you got guys that just look like they're supposed to be out there. And I think the system too. I think this, four down lineman system in today's college football. I thought Sonny brought up a really good point about that. The reasoning behind the 3-3-5. I get what he was saying originally when he said, okay, if defensive line is the hardest position to recruit to, let's go to the 3-3-5. You don't have to recruit as many, right?
Sure.
Logic made sense at the time. Then now he's come around to, and I think he's totally right here. He said, you miss on it. If you have four down linemen, you don't have to have three elite ones. Does that make sense? And
Yeah,
so,
it does. It makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So you may be able to go out and get four guys who are and I'm not calling these guys adequate, but I mean, you don't have to be an elite defensive end. You could be a really
Yeah.
good one because you got three other guys going against you. So it makes total sense. I like what he did. I think Andy Avalos' system probably reminds folks of what we saw around here for 20 years prior to Sonny's arrival, and I think that's kind of what folks have become accustomed to. And as you pointed out, those defensive ends look like guys that we've seen here before.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on what you said earlier about TCU maybe winning more than 7 or 8 games. I really think the schedule plays into their favor
Yeah,
with that.
yeah,
They were picked 10th in the preseason poll, but then they get Kansas State, Oklahoma State, UCF. Teams that were picked ahead of them at home. I just think
right.
I think that's a really big deal. And when you go back to 2022, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma at the time, those were home games. I think that really plays a big factor here.
I had a stat. I need to look it up real quick. I had a stat for you that you'll like. This team finishes or starts the year 2-0. Okay, that's great. They've done that 14 of the last 22 years. But Brian Sperry, our statistician, looked up a couple of things. The Frogs have gone to 3-0 10 of the 14 times. Okay, but that's happened just one of the last 4 years. And part of that
Okay.
has been the schedule. When you look at the schedule over the last 4 years, the early part of the schedule has been tougher, and you've had a bunch of road games. So the importance of getting off to a good start in the Big 12 makes a big difference because if you win your conference opener, if you're TCU, when TCU wins their conference opener, the Frogs are 8-4 over the last 12 years in those openers. They go on to have winning records. When the Frogs begin with a loss, they just don't do it.
Huh.
It's hard to get out of the hole, and so I think it matters. I think this Saturday matters. I think the way the schedule is laid out, as you talked about, I think it matters. I think having Oklahoma State at home is going to be a huge advantage. There's no question about that. I think Central Florida is a team that's going to contend for the league title that you're going to see on Saturday night. And so I think we'll find out early enough about this team and how good they are.
Yeah, and UCF's talented. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about it with Coach Dykes, and Gus Malzahn's a good coach, and they run the ball real good. So what's it going to take for the Frogs to come out on top Saturday
I,
night?
I think a couple of things. I think they got to get that crowd behind them. It's going to be a sold out crowd. I think they got to make sure that they keep them in it early, and that means early success. They got to start fast against this Central Florida team. They're going to be the most athletic team they've played so far, obviously. They're going to be the fastest team. They're going to be the most aggressive team. So I think you got to do two things. One, I think you got to start fast if you're TCU. And then you got to prove that this defense can hold up to a physical pounding because Central Florida will do that. RJ Harvey is a big, powerful running back. KJ Jefferson, the quarterback, is a big, powerful runner who, as Sonny told us yesterday, he reminds him of Cam Newton back there. They got a
Right.
really solid offensive line. So they're going to try to pound the rock on TCU. And so can you withstand that as a defensive unit? I think that will go a long way in what kind of success they have.
Okay. All right. Well, Brian, thanks for coming on the first show. For
Honor.
being on the first show, you don't get anything except my undying gratitude. So
Yeah.
thank you. We'll have you back on again.
And I'm going to leave you with this. Just remember, I no longer wear pants at home, Jeff.
That's a good point. That's a good
File
point.
that away. File that
Yeah,
away.
it's gonna scare me. All right, that's Brian Estridge, voice of the Horned Frogs. Real quick, we're about to get Sonny Dykes on. He's waiting in the queue. Wanted to tell you first though about Empire Today. Empire Today. If you need flooring, you need to go to Empire. They did our floors out in the big studio. My wife, we have 2 young kids, and we let them do whatever they wanted to our wood floors. They rode their bikes, scooters, all kinds of crap. Our floors need to be replaced. Empire makes it really easy for you. It's no pressure. You get to shop at home for your own convenience, find the right product that you need. You can take pictures. You can see what stuff you need to match. Empire is the best place to get new flooring. There's no copycats. They can't be beaten on quality, speed, service. So competitors try to advertise low. All right. So you try to advertise low because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. If you want good flooring, good solid flooring, and you want it done, relaxed atmosphere, go to Empire. Now, because you're watching this show, we got a deal for you. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive $350 off when they use the promo code DLLS. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/DLLS for details. And then one more thing real quick. I kind of touched it in the first segment. Here at DLLS, we're the new website, the new guys in town, but we're not new guys. I mean, I've been in this media market since 1993. Clarence Hill, who's covering the Cowboys, he's been around just about as long. We have Tim Cato. We have Mark Stein, the great Mark Stein, who's doing podcasts about the Mavericks. Just all kinds of talent lined up here. And so check us out. Go to alldlls.com, zoom around, check it out. We'll dive into it a little bit more. But first, we want to get Sonny Dykes in here. Sonny Dykes, head coach of the TCU Horned Frogs. And there he is. Coach Dykes, how we doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Good. Calling us from your office in right in Amon G. Carter Stadium. I tell you what, it was good seeing you yesterday, and I really enjoyed talking to you about UCF. But before we get into them, what do you think about your team through the first two ball games?
Well, so far so good. I like our team. I just like the makeup of the team. I like the guys. I like the competitive nature. It's just teams have a feel, and I just really, really like the feel of this team. I think it's a mature team. We have some older guys that are really good leaders, and I think what that does, it just helps everybody grow up a little bit and help raise the standard of the organization. And so from that perspective, I really like it. Week one, I thought we, did some good things against Stanford. I thought we played really well in stretches. But we made so many, kind of critical mistakes that it kept us from separating a little bit. And we ended up looking up in late in the fourth quarter, and we're behind. And it's a game that we probably shouldn't have happened, just given, the way that I thought we played during the game. But when you make the kind of critical mistakes that we did, you have the turnover, going in inside the 5-yard line. You have 3 penalties that keep scoring drives alive.
Right.
You miss a short field goal. You make the mistakes that we made. Typically, you get beat, especially on the road, and especially against an improved team like Stanford is. So anyway, I felt like we were fortunate in that game, but I think we showed some grit. It's a 1-score game. We told our guys, we figured there would probably be 8-9 games this year that were going to be decided by a score, and we were fortunate enough to win one. So we're 1-0 in those kind of games. And then last week, I thought we played like a mature football team's supposed to play. I thought we handled our business. We took care of the football. We didn't have any turnovers at all. We didn't have any penalties in the first half. And so I thought we did some good things, still not quite clicking on all cylinders yet. But anyway, I think we're getting better. And as I said, like the makeup of the team, we're certainly going to have to play better, this week against Central Florida than we have at any point, this season. I think UCF is going to be honestly one of the more talented teams we play, all season. And so, we're going to have to really raise our level of play.
All right. So when a Long Island shows up on your schedule, what do you hope to get out of a game like that?
It's what I tell the guys all the time. It's always about us. I think that, and in particular, when you play somebody that you're supposed to beat, it's about you. And again, mature football teams play to their standard. They don't play to the team that they're playing standard. And I think that was what impressed me about that performance Saturday. Was I thought we did that for the most part. And not taking anything away from Long Island, I think they're going to compete for a conference championship. I think that team will have a chance to get in the FCS playoff and potentially win their conference. But at the same time, we should have more talent than they do, and we do. And you want to play to your standard. You want to play to your ability and to your talent. And as I said, for the most part, I thought we did that. And really, that's how you measure yourself every week. I mean, I was happy that we beat Stanford. It's always objective number one is always win the game. But
Sure.
I was disappointed that we didn't play as well as we're capable of. And that's the idea is to go out there and play as well as you can play. And most of the time, that's going to result in a victory. And sometimes you're going to play somebody that plays better than you, and you get beat. But my hope is this team will continue to get better and better.
Well, it seems like, a professional win. They went out and did their job. They couldn't, maybe they could have done it better, but they didn't. They didn't get Northern Illinois. They went out
Yeah, for sure.
and did their job. I
And I
like
think
what you
again,
said.
like I said earlier, I think in some ways that speaks to to the maturity of the group.
Yeah,
I think that's in 22 we had a very mature team, and in those kind of games we handled our business. And 23, we did a poor job. I did a poor job of building that maturity and developing that. And we struggled in the games that we were supposed to win last year, and played a lot of times to the level of our competition. So certainly a step in the right direction.
yeah. I remember the 2022 team. You said that when you got hired, they seemed like they were kind of desperate for a change, or willing to buy into a change, and they did. But it was a veteran group, a pretty talented group with all the guys that went to the NFL. But you brought in some guys this year, especially on the defensive side, a cornerback and defensive line, to add the maturity. And you talked about this yesterday, so I hate to make you repeat yourself, but it's really hard to place a value on experience. I mean, experience is just priceless.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's, to me, that's kind of the essence of the transfer portal. And you graduate experience, and then you want to replace it with experience. And at the same time, you want to develop your young players and bring those guys along, and create competition. But yeah, but we lost some guys, that were pretty important players for us at some key spots. But we went and found guys that were proven. We went and found a Cooper McDonald from San Diego State, who played a million snaps, and Devin Deal from Tulane. And those guys played at a really high level and played for really successful programs, and were both really good players, and they've translated well. JT Broughton's another one that, same thing, had played a lot of snaps, had played at a high level, had played on a good team. And you bring those kind of guys in, and they raise the temperature of the room. There's a standard that those guys, and there's a maturity about those guys, and so it runs off on everybody. Nana is another one that has played a lot of football and takes a lot of pride in being a Horned Frog. And so you start adding all that together, and you look up, and all of a sudden you've got experience, and you got guys that are used to playing a big time football, and used to being successful.
You mentioned Cooper and Nana, guys who maybe got away, got outside of Texas. I know when you came in, you wanted to make sure that TCU is the Metroplex's team, and you want to dominate the Metroplex. Would these guys have gotten away if Sonny Dykes had been the coach back then?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I know, the school I was at previously, we thought we were going to get Nana. We recruited him really hard, and we were disappointed when he went to Notre Dame. But, I guess in the long run, glad it worked out the way it did. And didn't really honestly know about Cooper. But there's guys like that all the time. I mean, there's guys that get overlooked, that go places and play with a chip on their shoulder. And, when you go back and you look at TCU's history and what Coach Patterson built here, and a lot of those teams were built with those kind of guys that were maybe been a little bit overlooked, and came here and developed and got coached up, and played at a really high level. And so the transfer portal allows us to go find those guys. And, and Devin Deal's one too, that, is a local kid, and went to school for a while in El Paso, and now his dad is coaching over at Naaman Forest in Garland. So, and so anyway, there's guys everywhere, and our job's to keep the local guys here playing for us if we can, and if not, certainly go find them. The ones that got away, those guys are good players. Eric McAllister's another one, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
Really good player that got away.
Yep. Hey, we're talking on to Coach Sonny Dykes on the first All Horned Frogs podcast. Coach, a guy who never got away was Savion Williams. I think in this day and age of the transfer portal, Savion's been here forever. He's been here since 2020. Quarterback in high school. I'm glad you let him throw the other day. He was talking about it in spring practice. Said he has the best arm on the team. What do you like about Savion? He has a child who had some complications at birth. Just seems like this is a mature kid who also will knock the snot out of you if you try to tackle him.
Yeah. Real unique guy, real unique talent, really unique person, has a very unique story, has overcome a lot to get where he is, and just really proud of of everything that he's doing in his life. He's working really hard to be a good husband and a good father, and be a good student, and be a good player for the Horned Frogs. And so he's got a lot going on. Really pleased with the way he's taken on every one of those roles and takes a lot of pride in all of it. And it's fun to see him have success and to grow as a football player. And he's got a really bright future. And and I'm just excited to see how he continues to develop during the season. I mean, he's obviously very talented, and I want to see him translated on the field, and he has so far. And I think he's has an opportunity to be one of the best receivers in college football. And so I'm excited to go on this journey with him and see where he ends up.
Yeah. Also, J.P. Richardson's on the team, another veteran guy who started at Oklahoma State. How important is it for a quarterback? Josh Hoover's not totally ripe, but a younger quarterback to have senior guys that he can depend on.
Yeah. When you take Jack Besh and you take John Paul and you take Drake Dabney and you take Chase Curtis, DJ
Sure.
Rogers. I mean, all these guys are guys that have a ton of experience. JoJo Earl. You just look at this whole wide receiver group, and these guys have played a lot of football, and they're good players. And when you have guys that you believe in and you trust at the receiver spot as a quarterback, that's the best thing you can have. I mean, you need to be comfortable in your system, and you need to be comfortable with the players you're throwing the ball to. And if you trust those guys to be in the right place at the right time, that's when something magical happens throwing the ball. And everybody talks about big guys and fast guys and quick guys and all this, and really the magic is in when the quarterback knows where the receiver is going to be, and the receiver knows how to get there and gets there at the right time, and the ball is put in the right spot, and then all the magical fun things start to happen then.
Sure. Second year for coordinator Kendall Briles. First year for Andy Avalos. UCF's going to be a pretty good test. What do you see from UCF? I guess it starts with the quarterback, KJ Jefferson.
Yeah, really good football team. I mean, they're one of the more talented teams we'll play this year, if not the most talented. Just a lot of great skill, speed. A quarterback that's got over 40 starts, big, strong guy. Running backs that are powerful and fast. Receivers that are really, really fast that have a ton of experience in production. A really good, huge, athletic offensive line. The defense that's built around a defensive front. Their 4 guys up front are really, really good. The 2 ends are great pass rushers. The 2 tackles are big guys that are athletic, that play tough. They got a nickel that's a really, really good football player, a 6'2" corner that's very, very athletic. I mean, just a very good football team.
Mm-hmm.
Very good in the return game, both the punt return and kick return game. Their kickoff team is one of the best in college football. I mean, they're just really, really athletic and can run, and they play tough and they play physical.
Yeah, I talked to you for a story I did for TCU Magazine about UCF, like a sleeping giant. Kind of, the school has a enrollment of nearly 70,000 people, students, and right there in Orlando. Not everybody can go to Miami, Florida State, and Florida, and there are enough kids to make a pretty good club for Gus Malzahn can just go probably recruit Orlando and be okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you took those teams and you compared the talent at those 4 teams that you just named, I mean, UCF's going to compare very favorably to the rest of those teams. I mean, they just are. And, as you said, there's a lot of good high school football in the state of Florida. Central Florida also does a really nice job in the transfer portal. You look at a lot of their best players are SEC guys that played a lot of snaps at SEC teams. And, they do a great job of attracting those kind of guys. And Gus has had a lot of success through the years. And, what I think speaks really well about Gus is, they were one of the top passing teams in the country last year, and they had a passing quarterback, and now they've got a running quarterback, and they're one of the best, and they're the best running team in college football right now. And so, his ability to adapt to his personnel, I think, tells you what kind of coach he is. And, he does a good job. I mean, his guys are going to play hard, and he's always going to have good schemes, and I think he's, one of the better football coaches around.
Well, the Carter is sold out for Saturday. It's blackout day. Ought to have a great crowd. Ought to be a great ball game. And Coach, I just want to thank you for hopping on the initial show here and making it a success. So good luck on Saturday, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Congrats on the first show, and look forward to seeing you again.
All right, Sonny. That's Sonny Dykes, head coach of the TCU football team. We're going to go to Jamie Plunkett to catch up on some other stuff. But first, a little more about DLS. If you guys in Fort Worth or wherever are tuning in for the first time, DLLS. Again, we cover all the major sports. We're covering TCU. But the key for us is our diehard membership. We want you to be a diehard. We want fans to interact with us. We want to have a reason to share all of our access and to have a good conversation with you guys. I've seen some of you guys on the chat. Really appreciate that. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Be sure to hit the like button. It'll do my ego a lot of good if you do that. But it's sports coverage like you've never seen before. If you live in Fort Worth, you know what's become of the newspaper there. They don't even print 7 times a week. They're down to 3 times a week, and that newspaper is you can line your birdcage with it. The stories are old. It's just not current stuff. You get stuff like this podcast, daily podcasts for Cowboys, Mavs, Stars, Rangers, which I'm also on. We're doing a post-game podcast as soon as they're done in Arizona today. And being a diehard member, you get a free T-shirt. Not just one. You get a T-shirt every year. They're valued at $35, so that's basically half of what you'd have to pay for the membership. In addition to the free merch, you get early access to our special events like stadium takeovers and watch parties, trips that we might be taking. You get 20% off of merch. I mean, it's badass. It's cheaper than any of the local outlets, the legacy outlets, if you will. And we got the talent. We can put up with anybody there. So go ahead and sign on, become a diehard. And while you're doing that, at alldlls.com, go to store.allcitynetwork.com and check out some merch. All right, we have fantastic merch right now for DLS. It's just in the shirt and sweatshirt phase. We're taking pre-orders. There is a TCU shirt, which I have on the way. I also have 3 Ranger shirts coming too. So representing the beats that I help cover. But you can check out whatever your favorite team is, whether it's the Cowboys. I won't hold that against you. The Stars, the Mavs. Take a look, check it out, get you a shirt, $34.99, and then hats are coming. Look at me. I always wear a hat. Everybody knows that I always wear a hat. So I'm going to be getting more stuff from the store once hats are ready. Again, it's at store.allcitynetwork.com. And now we're going to go to my man, Jamie Plunkett from 247 Sports, my buddy, former co-worker in 2 different places. Jamie covers the hell out of TCU, not just the football team, which he does with Jeremy Clark, but also other sports. But it's football season. I don't know if you know that or not. It is football season. What have you thought about the Frogs so far? We've heard from Brian. We've heard from Sonny Dykes. Now you're going to cap it off.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to get the mental image out of my head of Brian not wearing any pants. So that one's gonna stick with me for a minute, unfortunately. But I've really liked what I've seen from TCU through the first 2 weeks. Much more sound defensively than I thought they would be with the new system with Andy Avalos coming in. I really like the 4 down front. I like the aggressiveness of the linebackers on that side of the football. I thought they've looked really clean, minus maybe 1 or 2 gap assignments that have been missed when the quarterback is running the ball. And that's something they're going to have to clean up at UCF for sure with KJ Jefferson coming to town. And then offensively, I think Sonny nailed it when he was talking earlier. The veteran experience leadership on the offensive side of the football is really showing up through the first 2 weeks. And I think it can't be understated either. This is the first time that TCU offensive players have had the same coordinator for 2 consecutive years since 2020 and 2021. So there's a lot of continuity on that side of the football. I think that showed up early, especially in their red zone execution, which was frankly terrible last year. And so it's been a good first 2 weeks, and now they get their first really big test of the season in UCF coming to town.
Yeah. You were there yesterday, and I'm sure you've looked at it a lot more closely than I have. But just listening to Sonny there, it sounds like UCF should be competing for a national title. I'm sure that's just what a football coach does. But everybody knows the name KJ Jefferson. If you've followed college football for the last 5 years, you know who he is. But who's their running back? They got a pretty big dude back there.
Yeah, they do, and he's pretty solid as well. Run for over 240 yards to start the season. He's got 6 rushing touchdowns for them as well. Just an absolute stud back there named RJ Harvey. He's in his 5th year. He's another one of those experienced kids that Sonny was talking about earlier from Edgewater, Florida. He is this unique combination of speed and size. So he can get to the edge, he can get to the outside, turn the corner, and all of a sudden he's gone for 50 yards. But he's got the strength too to hit that A or B gap and fight through a block, fight through a linebacker, and get some yards after contact. So his versatility with the ball in his hands, complemented by KJ Jefferson's running ability, is, I mean, there's a reason UCF has the most rushing yards and most rushing touchdowns in the country through the first 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah, when Sonny kind of called KJ Jefferson, like basically called him Cam Newton 2.0, or maybe not 2.0, but a cheaper version of him. But the size is I think is what Sonny was pointing to, and also the Gus Malzahn connection. And then you remember that Auburn team, they threw it, sure, but you didn't want to get in front of Cam Newton when he was running the ball. So it's going to be hard for a tough test for Andy Avalos' defense. And that brings me to buy, sell, or hold. Jamie, are you buying that defense?
It's a good question. I think I am at this point because we've seen some really good tendencies on film through the first 2 weeks. I think the fact that they're getting a lot of quarterback pressure, even if it is a Stanford and a Long Island that are your opponents, they're getting in the backfield consistently. You look at UCF on the other side of the ball, they've played New Hampshire and Sam Houston State. I think they've only recorded 1 sack so far this year. And so I think it's still a testament to TCU's defensive front that they've been able to create disruption in the backfield. I'm excited to see how they do that against what will be the best offensive line they've faced so far this year. And then in the secondary, we've seen pretty clear improvement, partially because they're not having to cover guys for 6 and 7 seconds at a time. It's another veteran group. They got some really good transfers in there as well. I think Brian talked about the cornerbacks. And, so for now I'm buying. I think we'll know a lot more after this week and then in 2 weeks when they play SMU.
All right. Are you buying the offensive line, which has had to overcome some losses? Brandon Coleman primarily among them. What do you think about the line, especially Brockermeyer at center seems to have really come in and shored things up?
He has. It's always hard to build an offensive line out of the transfer portal. And I think TCU's in that situation where they're trying to get away from that with some of the young guys they've recruited, but they're not quite there yet. So they got Brockermeyer from Alabama, like you mentioned. They got Carson Bruno from Louisiana Tech, left guard, Colton Deary transferred in last year from Maryland. So there's still, I think, some syncing up that needs to happen, especially when you're talking about run blocking, because I don't think we've seen TCU run the ball as effectively as they've wanted to through the first 2 games of the season. But I think I'm holding on the offensive line right now. I'm definitely not selling quite yet. We don't have a large enough sample size, but a good performance this week, and I might be buying more.
Buy, sell, or hold? Josh Hoover, the quarterback, 2nd year as a starter now. He hasn't made many mistakes, and if you want to go back to the Gary Patterson days, he used to say, my quarterback doesn't need to win. He just needs to manage the game. But then Josh Hoover also won a game. So what are your thoughts on Josh Hoover?
I'm buying as much Josh Hoover stock as I possibly can. I love this kid. He is, it's not often that you have a kid in his first 8 starts throw for over 300 yards in 6 of them. Mm-hmm. And the only reason he didn't against Long Island was because Ken Seals came into the game for the majority of the fourth quarter, because it was 45-0 or whatever. And so I love what I've seen from Josh Hoover so far this year, as far as development goes, as far as decision-making goes. One of the big challenges for him this offseason was balancing fearlessness with efficiency. He has a little bit of that gunslinger mentality, and he wants to make all the throws. He thinks he can make every throw at any given moment. But what part of his learning process has been is, hey, I don't have to make this throw. There are 2 other options I've got on this play that are probably going to work out better for us. And he's been making those decisions through the first 2 weeks of the year. Now, We've also seen TCU this past week really get out in front of Long Island and not have to worry. And he still made all of the right decisions. On the other side, a close game against Stanford, losing in the fourth quarter, made all of the right decisions. We've seen him in both of those situations so far this season. And just from my observations, he's made the right call pretty much every time.
That's good to hear. Yeah, throwing the ball out of bounds. That's another good option sometimes. Exactly. That ain't bad. All right. Buy, sell, or hold Kyle Lemmerman.
I'm buying Kyle Lemmerman.
All right.
Look, freshman kickers, kickers in general in college, man, I wouldn't want to put my life savings on him, but he's a kid with an absolutely incredibly strong leg, right? In fall camp, I know you were out there a couple times. He was booming 60-yarders pretty consistently in fall camp. He's got all of the leg strength you want in a kicker. I think some of those, I'm a college kicker now, jitters have maybe hit him the first few weeks. But I think as the season progresses, as he settles in, he's, I think, the most talented kicker TCU has had since Jaden Oberchrome. And I think we'll see him even out here as the season goes on.
All right, there you go. And then the last buy, sell, or trade. Are the Frogs good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I had them slotted around 8-4 before the year started. I don't think I've seen anything to come off of that quite yet. Maybe bump them up to 9-3, just with how some other schools in the Big 12 have played so far this season. I'm looking at you, Texas Tech specifically. I think this is a good TCU team. I think they're taking a strong positive step forward from a 2023 season that was really disappointing. And we should see them, in the conversation for, hey, who's going to make the Big 12 championship, hopefully still in October and early November.
Yeah. We covered TCU together pretty hard in 2022, and that team had so many guys that went to the NFL. There are two guys that I think are great stories. Emari DeMarcado, what a great story he turned out to be. And then Dylan Horton, who, a great story. Good news. His cancer is in remission. He's been back at practices, and maybe not practicing for the Texans. But what do you remember about those two guys?
Well, I think it's so funny when you talk about DeMarcado, because he is a guy who TCU fans could not understand why he was playing over Kendre Miller, why he was getting snaps when Zach Evans was still on the roster. Yeah. And one of the things that I know you talked about, what Jeremy and I talked about as well, one of the most important things you can do as a running back in college is block. Yeah. And he was by far the best blocking running back on the team, and that's what earned him reps on the field. And then all of a sudden 2022 happens. Zach Evans dips, goes to Ole Miss. DeMarcado becomes the primary backup. Kendre Miller goes down with that knee injury in the Fiesta Bowl against Michigan, and DeMarcado steps up in the second half and absolutely runs the heck out of the ball. And I believe that is the performance that got him on Arizona's radar. And that performance is why he's in the NFL right now. And so a guy that did all of the little things right for the majority of his career got an opportunity in his second to last game and really made an impression. And then with Dylan Horton, a guy who, started as a safety in college, then moved to linebacker, then moved to defensive end, and just excelled the closer and closer he got to the line. 4 sacks in that Fiesta Bowl against Michigan was one of the reasons that TCU felt comfortable in that 3-3-5 defense in 2022, is because he was so talented out there on the edge that he could handle double teams. You lost him last year, and you saw kind of the shift in that team. My lights just turned off in here. Oh, well. But you lose Dylan Horton, and you see what happens to that defense in 2023. So very excited to hear that he's in remission after fighting Hodgkin's lymphoma last year. Hopefully his NFL career is a long and healthy one. I know the Texans absolutely love him down there in Houston. Really looking forward to seeing him get back on the football field.
I was going to ask you about a bunch of other sports, but we're running out of time. But it looks like I saw this story that you tweeted out. Big recruiting weekend for men's basketball.
Yes, they've got a couple top 100 recruits for the 2025 class coming in. Nigel Walls, a stretch 4 power forward out of Houston, and Caden Edwards, a kid from Duncanville, who shooting guard from Duncanville, who's wildly talented, a top 50 kid in the 2025 class. TCU is coming off of their best high school recruiting class ever under Jamie Dixon and previously, and he's obviously capitalizing on that momentum, getting a couple of really talented kids in this weekend.
Awesome. Jamie Plunkett, thanks for coming on the first show. You don't get anything, maybe I'll buy you a beer sometime, but we're definitely going to have you back on because I need all the help I can get.
Oh, I got your back, Jeff.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Looking forward to it, man. Congrats on the show.
Thanks, man. Take care. All right, guys, that's it. We've hit the hour mark. It felt like 45 minutes, let's say. Anyway, went pretty fast. I know I talk fast. I'll work on that. But thanks to our guests, Brian Estridge, Jamie Plunkett, and, of course, TCU head coach Sonny Dykes. Pretty good way to start off what hopefully is a very good weekly show, and hopefully we start cranking these out a little bit more. So that's it. The inaugural All Horned Frogs podcast is in the can. Thanks for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.